Daewoo Country, Lihokan. Kanggu Mountain 300 miles west of Lihokan, one Kithao observes Mingdao Peak, and the clear bells ringing from Mingzan Hall, the most majestic hall on the peak. The bells are loud and not piercing, and the sound is undulating without interruption. This is the bell in the morning class of Yukidao Temple. It can be heard 10 miles away, and the bells can be heard. The people in the Guanzhong stop what they are doing, and go to the temple in 3s or 5s. The disciples on the road exchanged their cultivation experience, or talked about strange things. At this time, only one of them could speak loudly. Brothers and brothers, I heard that this morning class was given by the master himself. Everyone heard this, and some were surprised, and some were flat-faced, and the latter had heard the news early. Seeing that people's reactions were mixed, the person still said, I am the state church of Daewoo. Each of the 120 cities in the country has set up a view to recruit disciples. Although the views accept new responsibilities, there are many masters. It is done by the old and hopeless, but we, Wang Lihokan, are very young and promising, and we are not expected to achieve the Golden Core Road in the future. If we have his guidance. Su couldn't bear to speak too much. A burly figure interjected, Senior Brother Su, I certainly know the reputation of Guanzhou, but it is a pity that Guanzhou is closed all day long and I don't see him a few times a year, so what can I do? The person who intervened should be quite prestigious among the disciples. After listening to his words, everyone showed regret and nodded frequently. The person who was called Junior Brother Su was not annoyed when he was interrupted. He turned to the burly man and said, Brother Ge knows that just a few days ago, the master gave a letter to the master. He just awarded the letter to him. I will speak in person, this is. Everyone has long been aroused by curiosity, but the younger Brother Su's voice became more and more nuanced, and he gradually moved away from Brother Ge. Later, it turned out to be like a mosquito, even less audible. Everyone cursed secretly in their hearts, still calming their faces, but they all asked about them. After a while, everyone had a preliminary outline of the new junior. This younger brother named Wu Yi, a member of Dixuan Kingdom, a neighboring country of Daewoo Kingdom. His grandfather had a connection with Wang Guanzi before he became a monk. He just heard that his grandfather seemed to have been attacked by political opponents recently, so his grandfather asked him to take refuge here. After all, the disciples inquired clearly, although Wang Guanzu himself did not dare to say anything because he had recruited the younger apprentices himself, the disdain on his face was undoubtedly revealed, but how can a child of a family be like relying on the support of their family? Senior Brother Ge and Senior Brother Su, who were walking at the end, smiled at each other and showed their faces. After proud, Junior Brother Su couldn't help but worry, and asked, Brother Ge, I will do something like this, what if I get annoyed by the subject? Brother Ge frowned when he heard this, his eyes condensed, and he said coldly, Senior Brother Su, this is the end of the matter, do you still want to hide? If you let the master want to break the rules, my family will still be there. A place to stand. Senior Brother Su avoided his gaze and gave a weak hum, but his heart began to plan a way to escape. Senior Brother Ge is a child of the Ge family in Nanjun, and belongs to a direct line. After all, he is not a child of a big family. There is no need to fold in too deep in the Lord's struggle. If the Lord holds onto it, the children of the aristocratic family will not be able to protect themselves in the end. Senior Brother Ge saw him curling his eyebrows in deep thought, and felt a great hatred in his heart. Once the matter is settled in the heart, he can't be killed, and his path to progress will be cut off. Speechless all the way, the disciples gradually arrived in the hall in 2s and 3s, and according to the entry sequence, they looked for their futons and sat down on their knees. After a while, the bell rang again. The previous bell was called to call the bell, which meant to call the disciple, and this bell was called to stop the bell, and the bell was stopped so that it would not be regarded as a missed class. You will be punished for copying through. Just as the bell rang, a middle-aged Taoist stepped into the temple, painted white clouds and red sun on his robe, and painted mountains and rivers and the earth down. His footsteps seemed ordinary, but if you listen carefully, it is not difficult to hear that he plays in unison with the sound of the bell. Move with the sound, follow the rhyme, harmonious and harmonious. The middle-aged Taoist was followed by a young man, who was dressed in plain clothes, walking with each other, as if not walking by himself, but being led forward. In the hall of there is a raised Thre pedestal. Taoists stepped on the high platform step by step, and the young man stood by. Just after the Taoist climbed onto the high platform, the chime stopped, and this quiet transition caused many disciples to surge in energy and blood, their breaths were uncertain, and their bodies undulated. The Taoist turned around and paused, and the sound of the sudden sound calmed the swaying minds of the people like that of Hong Zhongdalu, and the people's minds condensed, and the whole hall was solemn. The middle-aged Taoist is Wang Guanzu among the disciples, and the common name is Wang Chuchen. At this time, he saw his eyes slowly sweeping the people in the hall, and said in an unhurried manner, "I have been the master of one vision for more than 3 years, and I have not taught you anything on weekdays. This master is really incompetent." After hearing this, everyone couldn't understand the subject's mind, so they all bowed and said, "The subject is serious." Wang Chuchen laughed. He didn't see happiness or anger. He didn't say any more. He opened the door straight to the point, "There is anger among the heavens and the earth. It's this qi that can be repaired with one valve." The hearts of the disciples moved with the sound, their thoughts were flying, and the magnificent pictures of the past and the present could not help appearing in their minds. Then they imagined a process of breath from being produced, growing, and finally dying, and it was mutually confirmed with their usual practice gains, and their minds the aura in it also changed as their thoughts changed. For a while, everyone was intoxicated, but one exception was the new disciple Wu Yi. He had just started a few days ago. At this time, he was immortal. To him, Wang Chuchen's explanation seemed to be a good example to him. I heard him scratching his head, agitated. But even so, he frowned, trying to remember every word that Wang Chuchen said. Don't say, a morning class, at least let him listen to some common sense of cultivation. Just like this initial stage of cultivation is called refining qi, the so-called refining is nothing more than breathing out aura. After the aura fills the danshan and forms a sea of qi, it guides the aura to open the veins of the whole body. Can be called the foundation of the avenue, so it is also called the foundation. Other sects only focus on the accumulation of aura in the refining state. According to the degree of aura saturation, there are 9 refining qi or the 13th floor of refining qi. To become one body, there are 9 changes in refining qi, but Wang Chuchen only talked about the first 4 changes, which are anger, gathering qi, receiving qi, and condensing qi. There is no difference between the first 4 changes and other factions alone, while the latter 5 changes require entering the inner door to learn, and the inner door is just one valve. The explanation of Wang Chuchen has been talking from early morning until noon, and there is no end, and there seems to be a rhyme circling in the hall. Everyone looked down and concentrated, deducing aura changes, and Wang Chuchen's voice directly poured into their spiritual platform to guide them out of their own path. After a long time, Wang Chuchen opened his eyes, no sound was heard in his mouth, and the morning class ended. The voice stopped, and the faint Taoist rhyme gradually disappeared. Some disciples quickly awakened from a state of enlightenment, with a look of regret on their faces. If they continued for a while, perhaps the cultivation level could be improved a lot. Everyone woke up sooner or later, but they all woke up before a cup of tea, and finally they all bowed together and said, "Respectfully send to the Lord." Wang Chuchen nodded slightly, waved his robe sleeves, and disappeared into the hall. All the disciples got up and prepared to leave the hall. They called friends and talked with each other about what they had previously practiced. Most of the people's faces were unquenchable and joyful, their voices were light, and their voices were open. It was obvious that they had gained a lot of benefits. Wu Yi was planning to leave together, but a voice came from his ears, and the steps he was about to start stopped, his body standing upright like a green pine. Before leaving, some disciples didn't forget to look back at their little junior brother, and they didn't move. Some people who wanted to make friends with each other didn't look too enthusiastic in the public. After all, he knows that he has a close relationship with Guanzu, and there are always people who want to use his shortcut to seek guidance from the Guanzu. In their eyes, Wang Guanzu is speaking for this newcomer, so how can they not make them envy and jealous? I don't know how Wu Yi, who scratched his head, felt when he knew what they were thinking. After a while, everyone left clean. Wu Yi was not allowed to wait for long. A clear breeze blew from outside the hall. Wu Yi glanced intently and saw that one person appeared on the empty steps. It was Wang Chuchen who had made Wu Yi wait for a moment. Dust. Wu Yi saluted Wang Chuchen, standing aside, bowing his head for training. Wang Chuchen looked at Wu Yi and stared for a while, his face showed the vicissitudes of life, as if he was reminiscing about something. After a long time, Wang Chuchen calmed down, his eyes became waveless again, and a sense of refinement appeared on his body. Your grandfather and I were classmates, we made an appointment to expel the national teacher and help the community, but after 10 years of being an official, I found that the so-called theft of the national teacher's power for the country is just a joke. The emperor is also the same. Who is Kuang? Who is it? Wang Chuchen narrated a story that seemed to be not him in a flat voice, but he was even more angry. What happened after Wu Yi also knew that he knew these things when he was asked by his family to leave the country for asylum, but he still lowered his head quietly and asked Wang Chuchen to continue. After that, I hung the crown and went away, but your grandfather thought that I gave up my previous agreement and broke off diplomatic relations with me, Wang Chuchen said, smiling softly, and then said, your grandfather is a bull, but in the end I have sent you here. There seems to be a sense of pride in the words www.mtlnovel.com and there seems to be a trace of melancholy. The appearance of Wu Yi means the failure of his grandfather. In the past, he also wanted to realize this dream. Effort. Wu Yi was silent, and since then the two have taken two different paths. Wang Chuchen traveled around the mountains and water, and unexpectedly met a real person in Linjia, who was included in the door wall, and then with his extraordinary aptitude, he rose up in Xiandao. And his grandfather was ranked among the 3 men by virtue of his outstanding political achievements, ruling the government, eliminating the old evils, and making the Dexuan country a resurgence, but in any case, he still has to face the contradiction between the Imperial Party and the Kuomintang Party, although the specific process Wu Yi did not clearly, but in the end, it was natural that the National Teachers' Party won, and even the emperor was abolished by the national teachers on the grounds of licentiousness. The Imperial Party was completely defeated, and Wu Yi also came to this foreign country separated by thousands of rivers and mountains. Wang Chuchen stared at Wu Yi's eyes suddenly, and said coldly, I have given you a disciple position, but there are always some disciples and even professors who have some gossip. If you can't prove your qualifications, where do you come from? Let's go back wherever you go. Wang Chuchen closed his eyes and stopped speaking. Wu Yi bowed to Wang Chuchen and turned to leave. If a teenager like Wu Yi had an accident for the first time, and came to a different place and faced the pressure of being expelled, it would inevitably be uneasy if he didn't cry on the spot. But Wu Yi's steps are not flustered at all. Every step seems to have been measured by a ruler. He is well behaved, showing his firm heart. Wang Chuchen did not open his eyes, but Wu Yi's mentality was inferred from the sound of Wu Yi's steps. He did not comfort or encourage him. The path of immortality is extremely dangerous. If Wu Yi's aptitude is really bad, he will go down the mountain. If a rich man comes here, he asks for peace. Although he won't live forever, there are fewer disputes. The empty hall is silent for a long time, only the curling smoke rises up, and then slowly dissipates. Wu Yi walked non-stop after coming out of the main hall, and went straight to his own cave. The Laihokan Yuki Taoist temple is built in the Kanggu Mountains. There are 9 peaks and 12 streams. The Taoist temple recruits disciples once every 3 years, but only 20 or 30 disciples at a time. The Taoist temple accepts up to 5 disciples. The gate may become a professor and teacher, and he will have to go down the mountain in 15 years at most, so there are 5 peaks in the temple where the disciples live. The rest of the peaks are either homes for teachers and professors, or planting herbs, or stalking spirit beasts, so I won't go into details. Wu Yi's residence is on Lingxiu Peak. Lingxiu Peak is also the place where the most recent first-level disciples practiced the Taoism. The mountain is steep and the disciples rely on plank roads for transportation. It's terrifying. Wu Yi's cave mansion is on the top of the mountain. It's not that other disciples don't want to experience the small scenery of the mountains, but that they have a group of maidservants around them. Eating, but not accustomed to living a life of food, wind, and dew. Moreover, the mountain peaks are high and morning classes are inconvenient, so many people find a flat place at the foot of the mountain as a cave. The closer the mountain is, the fewer the number of people. When Wang Chuchen asked Wu Yi to choose the Dongfu that day, Wu Yi picked the Dongfu at a glance. At first, he was alone, without a companion, so he didn't have to worry about all these things. Secondly, he was a person who liked being quiet and not moving. In the end, those who became disciples through the normal way seemed not to see him very much, so why should he be hot? Where's your face on your ass? But when I went up the mountain today, I was dizzy after listening to the class all morning, and there was no dry rice in my belly. I was already exhausted from walking on the road. After finally getting to the Dongfu, Wu Yi lifted the gate stone to lock the Dongfu and fell on the stone bed without any movement, and soon went to sleep. After a long time slept, there was a knock on the door. Wu Yi braced himself to open the door. He knew that at this time the Luxus was delivering food. Sure enough, there was a middle-aged man with a yellow headscarf standing at the door. Most of these powerful men were orphans adopted by Taoist temples. They taught them some superficial techniques, and then tempered their physical bodies with other medicines and refined them into a non-destructive body. Possess a mighty power. If a strong man is successful, it is not a problem to move mountains and reclaim the sea, but since the beginning of his practice, he needs a lot of foreign objects and is easy to be controlled by others, so monks are not allowed to do so. At the beginning of the monk's practice, his body was weak, so he raised a few strong men for body protection. This is considered a relatively high-ranking man, and more of them do some handyman like middle-aged men to earn foreign medicine. Wu Yi took the food, thanked him, and took out a few pieces of silver from his sleeve and stuffed it into his hand. The middle-aged man turned around to avoid his gift, and said, "Don't dare to be, you can't be a teacher's gift." He quickly returned the silver in his hand to Wu Yi. Wu Yi's face sank, and he said displeased, "Are you looking down on me?" The middle-aged man is not yet, nor is it not, but he was so anxious that he was sweating profusely, and he couldn't say what to say. For a strong man like them, the disciple in Guanzhong is a god, and he was panicked when he had ever seen a graciously treat a mortal. Wu Yi held his hand and asked him to hold the silver in his hand. Wu Yi knew that because his cave was on the top of the mountain, it was not easy to travel, and the great men worked a lot, and foreign medicine was even more difficult to obtain. It would take a day or two. As time goes by, the workload of foreign medicine is still as much as before. It is difficult to guarantee that the luxuries will not be short of food for him, so we still have to get in early to prevent trouble in the future. The strong man took his silver and was so grateful that he bowed his head and bowed to Wu Yi. Wu Yi held him still and accepted the ceremony. I still don't know what made him panic. There was a trace of guilt in Wu Yi's heart, but he was soon annihilated by him. He was born in a powerful family. Don't use this method of getting people's hearts too familiar. Now he is a guest in a foreign land, and it is not easy to get along with other disciples. Chen can't count on it, and the people closest to each other will naturally get along well, and it's good to be eyes and ears." The middle-aged man bowed and turned to leave. Wu Yi didn't say anything else. If he was too enthusiastic for the first time, it would make people feel that the city is not deep. In addition, it will take a long time to observe how his humanity is. After a gust of wind swept the clouds, the food was wiped out. After drinking and eating, Wu Yi died of sleepiness. He spread out a piece of white paper, picked up a pen and dipped the ink, and wrote on the paper. After a while, a piece of paper. It is full of words, and the words cannot be said to be a self-contained family, but the iron and silver hooks are well minered. Wu Yi took out another piece of paper. The pen was not decorated. After an hour passed, Wu Yi put the brush on the pen holder and let out a long sigh of relief. 3 sheets of paper were already on the stone table. Wu Yi took the earliest written paper and took a breath and examined it carefully. If any other disciples see the words on the paper, they will be surprised. These words are clearly what Wang Chuchen taught during the class. Wu Yi actually said the content of Wang Chuchen's lecture was silently recorded. In fact, the memory of a monk after he has cultivated to a certain level is indeed far beyond that of a mortal, but the key is Wu Yi is still a mortal. Having such a terrifying memory is astounding. Wu Yi is not born with such a memory. One is that his grandfather is strict in his family management, and he is strict with him on weekdays. In both cases, all the children of Gongqing need to go to school too. It is also because his grandfather is an official, honest and self-contained. The taboo caused Wu Yi to be squeezed out in Taixu. Most of the doctoral professors ignored him. In this case, Wu Yi had to rely on himself, and naturally, he developed a strong character and possessed an extraordinary memory. But because of this, Wu Yi is naturally withdrawn and suspicious. Wu Yi checked carefully and marked out the areas of doubt. Although Wu Yi said that he was assiduous and serious, but he had never studied Taoist terminology before, so he recorded several words inadequately, or did not know the so-called, which caused him a headache. Helpless, Wu Yi had to do his best to modify the places that could be modified. As for the others, they were temporarily listed as pending. Then Wu Yi continued to silent twice, one time faster than the first time. The last time was less than half an hour. After the last time of silence, Wu Yi's eyes flashed, and a touch of confidence in his chest appeared on his face. These contents it has been completely written down. After writing, feeling exhausted, Wu Yi looked outside. It was dark, and thought, the man who delivered the food should be here again. Sure enough, after a while, the middle-aged man came again, but to Wu Yi's expectation, the leader was a 6 or 7-year-old Taoist boy. The loose sleeves on him looked strange and made people laugh. But Wu Yi didn't dare to have a slight discoloration on his face, and he stepped forward and saluted and asked, "Brother came from a long way, and the brother has missed the distance to welcome him. I wonder if the brother has any instructions." Even though these Taoists are only 6 or 7 years old, Wu Yi knows that they have practiced special techniques. Although their cultivation base grows slowly, their lifespan is twice that of ordinary people, but they have to maintain their immature appearance. The mentality will remain in the heart of a childish child. Regardless of the appearance of the Taoist boy in front of him at the age of 6 or 7, his actual age is not necessarily the grandfather of Wu Yi. The most important thing is that Wu Yi once saw this Taoist boy outside Wang Chuchendong's mansion. Dao Tong looked up at Wu Yi, saw that he was very courteous, and nodded in satisfaction, only to pretend to be an old man. "You are Wu Yi?" Wu Yi replied, "It's under." The master said, "Since you are a novice disciple, everything should be with you. Please come and see if there is any shortage." Dao Tong pointed to the bamboo basket on the back of the middle-aged man behind him. The middle-aged man hurriedly put down the bamboo basket on his back, only to see 2 sets of cyan-patterned Suanyun Taoist robe, an identity token, several books, and food for the evening. Wu Yi glanced at the objects in the basket, and then stopped watching. No matter how he fights, these basic things will never be short of him. Otherwise, it would be too ugly to eat. Wu Yi laughed and said, "Brother, I can still trust it, so you don't have to read it. In fact, unless the relationship with others is extremely bad, one would never scrutinize it on the spot. Wouldn't it be embarrassing in a bad relationship?" Dao Tong waved the dust and said to the middle-aged man behind him, "I haven't moved things in for junior brother Wu." The middle-aged man smiled honestly and immediately started to move his hands in and out. He was very busy. Wu Yi warmly invited Dao Tong to visit the cave. In the end, they put their sleeves together. Dao Tong didn't realize that the sleeves of his robe sank and his complexion became more amiable, and he happily left the cave. Finally greeted the two of them out of the cave, Wu Yi took a long breath. Wu Yi's welcoming and sending things were not in line with Wu Yi's nature, but living in such an environment, Wu Yi had long learned to be tolerant, more realistic, and to choose the one who was good, and did not learn. His grandfather adhered to his unwavering character. In the great profound kingdom, his grandfather ruled and governed, and power was in the hands. Although he was not liked by academic officials, even if he did not associate with others and live and study alone, no one would dare to offend him. Now he has taken refuge and fell. A hairy phoenix is not as good as a chicken. How dare to do the same thing as before, and honestly have a good relationship with people who can make good friends. Golden Wuxi falls, and the sunset glows all over the sky, magnificent and magical. Wu Yi didn't have time to appreciate the beautiful evening scene. After sending the two away, Wu Yi immediately moved to the ceiling stone and closed the cave, lit the fire fold, lit the lamp, took out the book sent by Tao Tong, and watched it under the lamp. The last book is called Little Jotian Transport Technique, which is an introductory vomiting technique. As for the other books, some talk about the rules and regulations, some talk about the customs of the realm of cultivation, and some give a brief introduction. Let's take a look at the realm of cultivation and the characteristics of each realm. Wu Yi read the book quietly with candlelight. He turned the book very slowly, but he never reread the book after turning it www.mtlnovel.com seriously. The candle light flickered, and there was no one around. I don't know what kind of animals outside the cave invited the moon to sing, and the rustle inside the cave resonated from time to time, creating a quiet scene. Although he is alone, Wu Yi is not uncomfortable at all. This kind of life he has experienced almost every day before, but rather leisurely and undisturbed. Although the cave was quiet and undisturbed, it was too poor. There was only a lamp on the stone table, the light was dim, and Wu Yi's eyes were numb, swollen, and painful. Fortunately, Wu Yi was not without help. He took out a red bead from his package, took out the lamp holder and placed it on the candle light. As the candle light continued to burn the beads became crystal clear. It shines brightly like a small sun, but it is not dazzling, nor does it feel hot, it is magical. And this bead also has its origins. 3 years ago, a meteor landed in Dangtong County of Daqchuan Country. www.mtlnovel.com. The huge Dangshao Lake actually dried up by nearly half, and the resulting drought spread to several counties. There were nearly 1 million refugees, and there were 20 to 30 rebellions triggered by the ruling and opposition parties. At that time, the Imperial Party thought it was a good time, so Wu Yi's father was appointed as a pacifier and censor to appease the refugees and investigate the matter. Wu Yi's father was just like Wu Yi's grandfather against the national teacher, so he took the opportunity to find a stone and said that it was God's grievance against the national teacher's authority. The National Division Party was unwilling to show weakness, and they fought back, believing that this was the reason why Your Majesty did not practice morality. This incident became the fuse of the dispute between the two parties. In order to prevent the National Teachers' Party from using this pearl to cause trouble, Wu Yi brought the pearl out of the great profound realm. The discovery of the magic of the pearl was an accident during the journey. Once, Wu Yi accidentally knocked over the candlestick while reading. The flames swallowed the package Wu Yi was carrying. Wu Yi was about to save him, but saw the package emit a bright white light, and the fire snake gradually faded away. However, after many experiments, Wu Yi found that the bead had only this magical feature. He was disappointed. As far as he knew, the emperor once bestowed a fist-sized night pearl on his grandfather and placed it in a dark room. A diamond emits colorful light after being irradiated, and this bead is not as magical as the night pearl diamond. It should be a mortal thing. With the red beads www.mtlnovel.com it is much more convenient. Wu Yi returned to the stone table to read carefully. Time passed quietly. What Wu Yi first looked at was not the practice of the practice, but the rules of insight. Firstly, if he practiced indiscriminately, he would fall behind. Secondly, now he is an official disciple. If he is not familiar with the rules, even this rule is not strictly checked on weekdays, but if others want to find his fault, it is much easier. It was quiet at night, but the sound of reading books came from time to time. The night is quiet. Wu Yi finally finished reading the book describing the rules of the inner world. He yawned, put out the candle, turned on the stone bed and went to sleep. Su is too tired today. Wu Yi touched the bed and fell asleep. What Wu Yi didn't know was that once the candle was extinguished, the beads would dim, but today, if the candle is extinguished, the beads still flicker and dim. And a strange light. Maybe the light was too dim, or maybe it was blocked by the moonlight coming in from outside Shimen. In short, Wu Yi didn't notice the change in the beads for the first time. The change of the beads continued, and the light gradually brightened, brightening the cave mansion as bright as the day. This is much stronger than the pearl of the night. I don't know how Wu Yi felt when seeing this scene. You can see it. The light of the beads gradually converges, but it is still very dazzling, and the light is no longer a simple light. It rotates and twists, like countless small bugs, forming a picture, and it will still move, down. It's like going back in time, showing what happened in the past. First is the picture of Wu Yi putting the beads on the candlelight, and then the beads moving along the way, including the scene where Wu Yi discovered that it can absorb the flames and emit light, and then back to the scene where it falls on the Dangtong Lake. The light curtain flows, wonderful. The light curtain continued to evolve, and the beads turned into huge fireballs and flew out into the sky. Only then a mysterious force blocked the light curtain. The light curtain trembled, but it quickly returned to normal and continued to evolve. In the Yulong mountain range, the Yimenmen Gate is here. Just above the gate, there is a palace surrounded by layers of clouds. It is called Tianji Hall. The big bell in the hall suddenly rang without wind. A black-cropped man sat in front of the bell. Slowly opened his eyes were like an abyss, which made people fall involuntarily. Gu Jingwubo's eyes made it clear to anyone what he was thinking. He lightly tapped the big clock with his hand, the bells ringed endlessly, and the sound converged into a picture, a scene of a big fireball trying to break through the barrier but was blocked but finally rushed out. This picture is very familiar to the man in the black robe, because it is 3 years old. He encountered the same situation before, but last time the fireball went from the outside to the inside, and this time the fireball went from the inside to the outside. The black-robed man pinched his finger and got nothing. Instead, he was uneasy and calculated the great horror, so he hurriedly stopped the calculation. The black-cropped man sighed, I can't even intervene in this matter. The black-cropped man immediately set down the altar and burned incense to pray. After another person's face appeared on the altar, he briefly summarized the matter. After a while, the faces on the altar gradually disappeared. After breaking through the barriers of the fascinating sky 2 consecutive times, this lower realm is also so dangerous. I don't know whether it is a person in his realm or an extraterritorial celestial demon, and I don't know when the immortal will arrive. The black-robed man secretly calculated in his heart. It is also said that when the beads evolved into large fireballs and flew outside the sky, the scene was blurred and intermittent. At the same time, a powerful and inexplicable force enveloped Wu Yi's cave house, and seemed to obliterate this bead and everything. people and things related to this bead. As a person who accompanies the beads day and night, Wu Yi felt this power for the first time. He was shocked by the cold sweat and immediately woke up from a deep sleep. After waking up, he found the change in the beads for the first time, and it was too late to think about the reasons for the changes in the beads. The terrifying power enveloped him again, scared him to stand up, and quickly jumped to the beads, not knowing why he behaved like this. It seems to be an inexplicable call. But Wu Yi's movement unknowingly strengthened the connection with the beads, and the force acting on him suddenly strengthened, but because the beads shared most of the pressure became much smaller. Until then, Wu Yi had time to look at what happened. After calming down, Wu Yi returned to his original calm appearance, his eyes flashed with wise light. There is no doubt that all these weird things were triggered by this bead. The key now is how to repel that mysterious force. It's just that the mysterious power comes from inexplicable, and I don't know how to do it at all. At this time, the light curtain above the beads became more messy and scattered. It should have evolved to important places, and the beads began to rotate. However, every time the beads were rotated, the surface of the beads would be cracked. Later, the beads were all over the cracks. It will be shattered when touched, which is shocking. Beads are still like this. Wu Yi feels a great deal of pressure and has difficulty breathing, just like a drowning person. For the first time in his life, he felt despair, his own wisdom, strength and influence were useless. What made him more like an ice cellar was that the light curtain of the bead evolution gradually dimmed, but it seemed like the light returned to the light curtain was much clearer, and Wu Yi saw the next scene. In a vast world, the two stood by the void. Standing in the void, the faces of the two were dimly visible. One was dressed in a black robe with red fire patterns on it, the blossoming red fire was eager to move, and the other was wearing a colorful Taoist robe. Behind, the colorful rays of light swept across the sky toward the other person. The rays of light were clearly boundless poisons, complete with 5 poisons, and countless other beasts and insects. Even when he looked at the light curtain, Wu Yi's hairs stood up, and his heart was throbbing. Can't see the other person's face expression, but since he can stand with the person wearing the colorful Taoist robe, I think it is not bad, and then he should make the move. But at this moment, there was a crisp cracking sound. Wu Yi secretly said a bad sound, and quickly looked at the beads. The beads split a large hole in the middle, extremely hideous. The spinning speed of the beads has also slowed down, and the light curtain almost freezes there, making Wu Yi cry out a pity. Seemed to understand his fate, and perhaps a trace of wisdom was born, Wu Yi received a faint thought, which turned out to be for him to light the lamp. At this time, Wu Yi was already sweating, as if he had just been caught from the water, but since the beads slowed down, the pressure on him by that force has also weakened a lot. He took this opportunity to step forward quickly and draw out the fire. Swipe, a flame ignited one after another. The flames were faint and small, but strong and immortal, just like Wu Yi's mood at this time. Being burned by the flames, the cracks on the surface of the beads gradually merged. Unfortunately, the light curtain above the beads is also dim and invisible. I don't know if it has disappeared or is invisible. The beads have become as ordinary as before, and the mysterious power is also missing. Where? It seems that it has never appeared before. But after what happened tonight, Wu Yi squeezed his face. Not in a dream, how dare he pretend that it had never happened before. He who is accustomed to controlling everything and then acting cannot tolerate this, and it really scared him today. Wu Yiqiang resisted fear and carefully inspected the beads. The dark red surface was the same as before. The tentacles were warm and radiant. Oh my god, it was the same as before. Wu Yi's heart was mad. Half an hour later, Wu Yi went back to bed helplessly, but every moment he woke up suddenly, looked at the beads on the stone table, and stopped sleeping all night. The quality of sleep was extremely poor. Fortunately, I won't have to go to morning class tomorrow. Wu Yi comforted himself like this before going to bed for the last time. On the second day, when the middle-aged man who delivered the meal shouted 3 times, Wu Yi opened the door sleepily and slowly took the lunchbox. Wu Yi's appearance is the appearance of lack of energy. Such people see a lot of middle-aged men, especially those who are underfunded, lack of pills and medicines, so they have to practice at night without getting rid of them, but consume too much energy. That was the case. The middle-aged man went down the mountain with caution. Back to the cave, Wu Yi stared at the beads on the stone table blankly. He didn't even want to eat the rice, because the candle was not extinguished and the beads were still shining, but because the sky was already bright, it was not as obvious at night. Wu Yi didn't know what to do with this bead and deliberately threw it away, but Wu Yi seemed to have an inexplicable connection with the bead, and he couldn't bear it. It would be troublesome not to throw it here. After thinking for a long time to no avail, Wu Yi simply put it aside and ignored it for the time being, let the candle light up, let the beads shine, took out the book he got yesterday, and turned it over. Like yesterday's book Little Jyotian Transfer Techniques, there is a meditation decision at the beginning, so that the disciples can be free from distracting thoughts when meditating and vomiting, so as to prevent errors in the movement of qi and disordered meridians. Was used by Wu Yi at this time. After repeating the King's Enju several times, Wu Yi's agitated mood gradually calmed down. Wu Yi then turned back. This book is not all in the original text. There are also some proceeds from the practice of later generations, and they are also copied together, and the commentary is even longer than the original text. Wu Yi learned that at the beginning of cultivation, it is necessary to produce a sense of qi, also known as the seed of true qi, which is called the innate qi, and believes that this qi is the beginning qi that has never disappeared. And give many ways on how to strengthen this spirit at the beginning. After the sense of qi is born, you basically only need to keep accumulating in the stage of refining qi. It was also mentioned before that other sects are divided by accumulation degree alone, but in terms of accumulation alone, one qi valve is subdivided into 3 changes. They are gathering qi, receiving qi, and condensing qi. Gathering qi is to gather the aura of heaven and earth on the surface of the body, while receiving qi is to collect the aura into the body, but at this time the aura is still gathering and dispersing, and it needs to be condensed in the Danshan qi si to make it attached to the innate qi. So, monk, you only need to mobilize the innate qi to command the aura, which is considered to be applied to the body by the power of the world. This gathering of qi, receiving qi, and condensing qi is originally one, but any problem in the middle will affect the speed of cultivation, so it is separate. It is not difficult to find that the division of the one state of qi refining according to one valve is based on the cultivation steps. Although the state can be divided by referring to the original saturation of the aura, it is a different faction after all. As you continue to practice, the more auras you control, the greater the monk's ability. In fact, the monks have grown up along with the continuous borrowing and even plundering of the power of the heavens and the earth. When they become successful, they can even change the sky and open up the world, which can be called boundless magical power. Except for reciting the meditation decision a few times silently, www.mtlnovel.com, Wu Yi did not start practicing rashly. One Qi Taoist thought one lesson for 5 days, and one test in March. Since Wu Yi did not become a disciple through normal channels, the other disciples of this class were 3. The month has started to practice, and it is now the end of July, and there is still another month to take the exam. The first change in refining qi is to be angry, but the first test fails to teach it, the second test fails to have the food allowance, the third test fails to abolish the origin text, and the disciple Wenbai is withdrawn. In other words, a disciple who has not developed a sense of breath after 9 months of cultivation will be expelled from the house. In fact, most of the people had already felt angry before the second exam, otherwise they would be laughed at even if they felt angry. Wu Yi, the disciple who came in through the back door, just as Wang Chuchen said to Wu Yi that day, if he could not prove his aptitude, he would come and go as soon as possible. You will be ridiculed if you feel vented before the exam. Then there is only 1 month left for Wu Yi, but it is not easy to get angry. It is normal for ordinary people to not know the door for 10.5 months. Wu Yi did not practice. First of all, he must have a calm mind to get a sense of breath. There must be no distracting thoughts. From the beginning, he blindly pursues speed, but it will not help and hinder the pace. Second, a series of preparations are required at the beginning of the practice, such as burning incense, bathing, and chanting. Prayer is not just a matter of chanting a few meditations. And the children's words yesterday will be delivered 2 days later, so Wu Yi is not planning to practice now. He spread out the white paper, picked up a pen and dipped the ink, and first put the book Little Jotian Transport Technique. I copied it again, then closed the book, wrote a silent copy, compared the two, looked for the wrong copy, once found the wrong part, sketched out and corrected it, and then wrote it silently again after correcting it, and then looked for the error. Repeatedly, this book has been memorized by Wu Yi, and the book is memorized. The breeze came slowly, the leaves trembled, looking down from the top of the mountain, it was open-minded, but Wu Yi's eyebrows were slumped, his complexion was dignified, he did not see pride, but he saw sadness. Today's encounter is to tell him that although there are financial clergymen on the journey of cultivating immortals, all of this is dependent on others, it is momentum, and he cannot decide. He has a master to teach the Fa, but what the master teaches is not something he can decide. Although today's class is not for free, it is of little use to him at the moment. The most important thing is to get angry and open up the seed of innocence, otherwise it will occupy the place and cause people to laugh at it, and I am afraid that it will not be driven down the mountain. Wu Yi only has more than a month, but one small class on the 5th and one big class in 1 month. Where did he get so much time to waste? His entry level lags behind the others by nearly 5 months. Those who teach the teacher, it is understandable to decide to explain the course based on the practice speed of most people, and there is nowhere to find reason. A jealous person who does not follow the usual sentence will probably choke him to death by feeling angry. There is no clear master-disciple relationship in Yuki Taoism, which means that even if Wu Yi seeks an opportunity to go to the master to explain his doubts, he will not necessarily get an answer. Although these masters usually have a high status, most of them have no hope of advancing. They want a longevity and riches and don't want to get too many mundane things. Of course, if you are a peer with extraordinary qualifications, it is not difficult to be taught by the masters, but Wu Yi remembered the way the master looked at him at the beginning, he stopped asking for advice. Thinking deeply, Wu Yi closed his eyes and stood still on the top of the mountain, without distracting thoughts, letting the breeze pass by, drilling into the wide sleeves, and then out of the sleeves. Wu Yi woke up from a state of meditation until he felt a hint of coolness. When he looked up, it turned out that the sky was full of sunset. After meditation for nearly 3 hours, his irritability was no longer in his heart, and he calmed down at this time. Turned around and returned to the cave. After hastily eating dinner, Wu Yi pulled out the little Jotian transfer technique that was in the book. He used to recite for the purpose of recitation, but this time he was for the purpose of cultivation. Looking at this book, Wu Yi smiled, with a complicated heart, and spent a few days walking around. Ben hoped to listen to the teacher's teachings so as not to make mistakes in his practice. In the end, he still had to rely on himself. Leaving his hometown and being weak. In addition to the beginning of his journey to immortality, Wu Yi was unconfident from the bottom of his heart, and he suddenly became a disciple. He urgently needed to prove himself, otherwise he would face the risk of being driven down the mountain. Domestic and foreign difficulties made Wu Yi place hope on others. But today, the external outlook has been broken, and internal fears and external worries have exploded. How to keep Wu Yi from restless in his heart? As its name suggests, Little Jotian Transport Technique mainly explains the method of luck, and the part that induces the sense of breath is rarely mentioned. It is worth mentioning that the qi in anger is not the qi from the outside world, but one's own innate qi, all in one, and all, referring to all innate vitality. At the beginning of birth, within the fetus, people use the umbilical cord to breathe with the mother's breath. The air of the fetus communicates the air of the birth mother, the air of the birth mother communicates the air of space, and the air of space communicates the air of Tahi. At that time, there was no mouth and nose breathing, and the two pulses and breaths of Ren and Du were connected, and there was no barrier, which was called fetal breath. When the fetus is round in October, the schizoids emerge, and the umbilical cord is cut, and its orifices are closed. Its breathing is the upper part of the mouth and nose, and the lower part of the tail, which becomes ordinary people's breathing. Ordinary people breathe down their throats and return to the lungs, waiting for everyone's breath. Its breath is thick and floating, with long breaths and short breaths. From then on, the chi of the cosmopolitan space cannot descend in the abdomen, and the innate ancestral chi stored in the abdomen, called the innate vitality, moves and heals out, but is lost in space. Over time, the weather loses too much, the kidney veins are weak, the root is not solid, all diseases are born, and they die. There are only a limited number of heavens and earths to cover your life, and you must know that keeping one's energy alive also means keeping one's life. Therefore, ordinary people want the art of longevity, and they should also ask for the method of prolonging life. Taoist cultivation is to return to the origin, return to the infant's innate state, in order to gain longevity. The method of vomiting and accepting returns the breath to its roots and preserves the innate chi. When chi is enough, all diseases can be cured, and the foundation of life can be fixed before the upper-level cultivation can be mentioned. It is also said in the Dan Sutra that if you want to light a bright light, you must use the method of adding oil. The birth of anger is the meaning of sprouting, that is, to mobilize one's own innate chi. There are two major difficulties along the way. One is not being able to sense one's own innate chi, and the other is that the exercise does not work properly when mobilizing the innate chi. The congenital energy is lost in vain, and the lifespan is reduced. Almost 99% of the people are blocked by the sense of aura, and they can't pass the first level of the immortal way, let alone practice afterwards. But for people who sense the sense of chi, it is more important to mobilize the innate chi movement. If this step is not handled properly, it will lag behind others, or even risk losing. So don't be careful. Wu Yi carefully read the original document and put it away. In fact, he has already written down these things, but he still feels uneasy, especially those Taoist terms. These terms are taught by the master in the classroom and do not fall into the words. Now Wu Yi was helpless, so he had no choice but to practice with guesswork. This was actually one of the reasons why Wu Yi was unwilling to practice on his own in the first place. Get rid of distracting thoughts, sit cross-legged, hold both knees, tongue against palate, eyes slightly closed, light inward vision. In accordance with the requirements in the Taoist book, Wu Yi began his first practice. The night was getting deeper, and the insects outside the cave were endless, adding a bit of life to the quiet night. The candle light was faint, and the beads exuded a bright light. The knock on the door awakened Wu Yi. He rubbed his eyes and just wanted to move, but found that his whole body was sore. It turned out that I didn't know when Wu Yi went to sleep last night, and his posture was not suitable. Body pain. Enduring the pain, Wu Yi briefly combed his hair and opened the door to welcome the meal. Outside the door, it was not the middle-aged man wearing a yellow scarf. He became a young man not much older than Wu Yi. Wu Yi couldn't help but wonder, and asked casually after taking the meal and fashion work, "The former strong man, where did you go?" A flash of panic flashed from the corner of the boy's eyes, and he hurriedly said, "My father, he was injured today, and he didn't intentionally send him late." As he said, the boy repeatedly assured Wu Yi that he would not send him late next time. Wu Yi just glanced at the sky. It turned out that it was already the hour. It used to be delivered shortly after the hour. It was nearly an hour late today, and Wu Yi, who was overwhelmed by his cultivation, only found out now. Seeing Wu Yi raising his head to look at the sky, and ignoring him, the young man was panicked, and eagerly, he knelt down and kowtowed to Wu Yi, guaranteeing that he would never be late tomorrow. Wu Yi was thinking about cultivating the mind-consuming things for a while, and had no time to look at him. When he saw him suddenly kneel down, he helped him up before he was finished, patted the dust on his body, and comforted him, "I get up late anyway, in the future. It's okay to send it later." The young boy had tears in his eyes, and said, "Tomorrow, Lin Li will never be late to delay my spiritual practice." Wu Yi gave a hum, and after a few simple words, let him go down the mountain. Looking at the vast sea of clouds in the distance, Wu Yi sighed, but after all, he shot. 1 hour late for the meal delivery today. It was the temptation of those people. Who were those people? Whether they were seniors or professors and deacons Wu Yi didn't know, but he knew that those people must see him uncomfortably. They were enemies and not friends. Although the self-proclaimed Lin Li did not tell Wu Yi what happened, Wu Yi, who has been used to conspiracy and tricks since he was a child, knew what happened without deduction. It is nothing more than seeing that Wang Guanzu has not seen him in the past few days, so that some people who can't understand him find an opportunity to try him. Naturally, the first trial shouldn't be too much, so I started with the meal, thinking that the middle-aged man wearing a yellow scarf was made trouble or even injured by them when he brought him the meal. After the delay, those people retreated and the young man was able to come up. Give him food. In fact, Wu Yi still had some doubts after he figured this out. The juvenile demeanor does not seem to be forced. Most people who are oppressed by the power evade and protect themselves. If no one delivers food to Wu Yi after these people do this, they must arrange their own food, the quality of the food. It is conceivable, and why the boy came here, is it just because Wu Yi once benevolent to his father? Yes, Wu Yi has even suspected the boy, and this is one of the reasons why he didn't ask what happened. Sitting at the table, Wu Yi hasn't eaten for a long time. He figured out how to deal with it. When he was studying at the Imperial College, he had encountered similar things. It was nothing more than standing still and waiting for an opportunity to expose, but the same experience could not be dealt with in the same way. Among other things, even if it is reported to him, there may not be people who will take care of him, and those people can easily push them away without touching the least bit of sewage. Thinking of this, Wu Yi couldn't help but glance at the Taoist book on the table. Sure enough, Wang Chuchen's path is the most right way. Strengthen oneself, increase cultivation, and adapt to changes without change. Let him be scheming. My realm is absolutely the same, so what is there to fear? All the problems seem to have been spared. Although there are endless solutions, none are available. Haggard Wu Yi quickly finished the meal. I have to say that Wu Yi had not practiced before this meal and did not know the benefits. Nowadays, the cultivation consumes too much energy and then eats. It actually has the effect of warming up the spirit. That is, if you don't practice, you will be hungry if you don't eat a meal. After closing his eyes and resting for a while, Wu Yi left the cave. The warm sun was basking on his body. The breeze came slowly and the distant mountains were picturesque. The qi of heaven and earth senses its own vitality, which is a kind of breathe-in technique, and a method for anger to be untimely. Wu Yi knew that he was a little impatient. According to common sense, being angry in January is already a talent, and being angry in March is common sense. Within half a year, it is considered to be a little poor, and the failure to be angry afterwards may be due to excessive energy consumption or poor meridian. In short, it is difficult to develop. The way of cultivating is about letting the flow go. If you realize it, feel it, there is no such thing as barriers to the realm of nature. A few days later, Wu Yi practiced vomiting and narcosis every day, and in the evening he felt his innate anger, and his life was plain and fulfilling. It is worth mentioning that since the boy who claimed to be Lin Li gave him food that day, the boy who gave Wu Yi food every day has become the boy named Lin Li, and he has never been late again. On the night after 5 days, Wu Yi thought that the days would pass, and was planning not to practice today. www.mtlnovel.com. To cultivate enough spirit, even if the professor does not teach the method of anger tomorrow, he will communicate with other brothers in anger. You can't lose the slightest feeling about the experience of the past. The stone of other mountains can be used for jade, and perhaps it can be improved. It's just that Wu Yi lay on the bed for a short while before going to sleep, and saw the red beads shining brightly, seemingly altered. After the last night of fright, Wu Yi didn't dare to look down upon it. A carp rolled and jumped up and watched intently. Bead. Boy, do you want to be a fairy? A mysterious voice came from the beads, and Wu Yi believed that he had heard it correctly. Held his right hand behind his back tightly, even his nails pierced the skin, bleeding out of blood. Wu Yi remained silent, tried not to show panic and fear, and pretended not to hear the previous voice. Recalling the changes in the beads in the past few days, Wu Yi secretly regretted that he had forgotten to analyze the changes in the beads. Since the great change of the beads that night, Wu Yi has discovered that the beads often pulsate with the sway of the candle light during the day, as if giving birth to spirituality, and even knows how to behave normally when there are outsiders present. But even if he knows this, Wu Yi himself, I don't know the reason for this, and no one can ask, and there is a kind of intimacy between myself and the beads. Although I am confused, I still plan to talk about it in the future. Wait, Wu Yi narrowed his eyes for a moment, and his heartbeat suddenly increased. Before, some magical things happened to the beads during the day, and they returned to calm at night. Wu Yi originally thought that beads also had a time to rest at night, but now it does not seem to be the case. And at this time, Wu Yi has been practicing hard for many days to no avail, and his heart is worried. People who can't understand him outside are ready to move. Tomorrow will be a small class. It can be said that Wu Yi is the most anxious time. At this moment, the voice sounded again, and Wu Yi's hair, who was immersed in his own thinking, stood up. Become a fairy. This time the voice seemed to be coming from all directions. With a bewitching and seductive voice, Wu Yi slowly touched the beads with both hands involuntarily. Biting the tip of his tongue, the faint blood let Wu Yi regain control of his body. A trace of panic flashed through Wu Yi's eyes, but at the same time he also felt a little puzzled. Why, don't you want to become an immortal? Feel free to travel around the world, live with the sun and the moon, how fascinating! The voice did not rush, as if everything was under his control. Wu Yi looked on coldly, silently, his squinted eyes made people wonder what he was thinking. You leave home to ask for the truth, you are squeezed out by others, no one can ask for it, work hard and achieve nothing, come on, come forward, and you will get my true biography. Not only can you get rid of the current embarrassment, you can also reach the sky in one step. Through verbal temptation, the red light of the beads is more intense, rendering the inside of the cave like a lava volcano. What is even more peculiar is that the red light gradually flows to form a picture with a hazy sea of clouds, towering ancient trees, and old apes climbing trees, cranes flapping wings and other fairy houses. Wu Yi looked at the scene of red light, his eyes thoughtful. The red light gradually changed, and there appeared the sight of the immortal being able to catch the stars and the moon, calling the wind and the rain, as well as the dragons, the colorful phoenix, the unicorn, the kyanki, and the gluttonous beasts that lived in the ancient legends. Are you the man in black? Wu Yi asked suddenly. I am not. The voice gave a specious answer. Wu Yi was puzzled and kept silent, waiting for Zhu Zi's answer. I am a part of that person, but not just a part of him. This bead is his inner cave. In that day of war, the two sides died together, leaving only this thing. The voice came, mixed with different tastes, Wu Yi couldn't even hear his main emotion. What else? A ball of fire. Hearing this answer, Wu Yi couldn't help but think of the night of fright, and finally he lit a handful of candles. Could it be that? Wu Yi thought to himself, no wonder I am familiar with this bead, even in harmony. Why do you make me immortal? Since you have this ability yourself, why do you want to find me? It's not better to become immortal by yourself. I am sure that the ability is not good. Wu Yi's tone is not good, showing a sense of disdain, trying enraged the beads. The beads jumped up and down when he heard the words. I don't know if Wu Yi was really angry, or if he was deliberately soliciting Wu Yi to believe him. Ignorance, the man in black in your mouth is a different kind of person who has entered the Tao. For 1,000 years, he has been a half-step immortal. The reason why he has not become immortal is to comprehend a trace of destiny to establish the foundation of immortality. He was killed as a half-immortal. I don't know how many immortals, and in the end even a golden immortal desperately died. His method is more than enough to pass you into the immortal gate. The voice turned contemptuously at Wu Yi. Wu Yi ignored it and said with disdain, so powerful, in the end not still a half-immortal, but also fallen, how can I make people become immortal? I enter the Tao with a different species, I practice the law with a human body, what if it is not allowed? Zuzi didn't rap with Wu Yi, changed the angle, and said, then how will you pass the next monthly exam? How will you stand up your heels in one valve? As soon as he said this, Wu Yi, who was originally complacent on his face and thought that he was better at argument, couldn't help but gradually disappeared. Yet, immortal, still worried about whether he could become immortal, and he didn't even feel his aura. What a joke! The timing of the bead selection is a coincidence, and I have a deep mind. Wu Yi squinted his eyes and opened it again. He took a deep breath and asked, what should I do? I have to say that Wu Yi's heart was moved. Previously, Su Yu was only to gain more initiative. But, he couldn't help responding accidentally. The beads did not speak, but the picture composed of the red light emitted by the beads changed again. Wu Yi took a closer look and found that it turned out to be the last scene that disappeared that night. It was still the scene of the confrontation between the two people, their complexion still could not be seen clearly, but when the sky poisoned the man in black, the picture did not disappear. 5 pillars of light appeared next to the man in black. In fact, if you look closely, there are actually 10. Divided into the inside and outside, it is divided into 5 lines, changing and surrounding endlessly, protecting the black man inside. It is cylindrical, but as the poison bites and squeezes, the cylinder is gradually compressed into a spherical shape. Although the light sphere shattered and shattered a lot, it trembled, and it was precarious. At this time, the picture trembled sharply again, as if it was going to be broken. It was not that the beads had insufficient spiritual power, but the light ball was gradually compressed, and the smallness was too small, and all merged and turned into a fire. It is this fire that makes the picture tremble. Even Wu Yi, who saw the fire, felt a majestic force that destroys the world. Like a bubble bursting, the picture shattered and the light of the beads was much dim, showing that the scene before the evolution was quite expensive. I am the fire. Zhu Ziyi said triumphantly. Was stunned by the flames that appeared in the previous screen, Wu Yi's back was covered with cold sweat, for fear that the power in the flame would burst out and swallow it, and ignored the words of the beads. Zuzi didn't even notice it, and still smugly said, it's just a piece of cake to help you become immortal with my ability, but when I woke up, I was sealed by the mortal fire. You just have to expel the mortal fire. It's okay. Wu Yi frowned, and said, I am immortal, how can I help you expel it? Are you making fun of me? You have already made an indissoluble bond with this bead that day. Just holding the bead in your hand, you can sense the common fire and expel it at that time. The voice became a little anxious and replied hurriedly. Wu Yi heard the words, slowly holding the beads in his hand, sinking his mind into the darkness, but a little light was faintly visible in the distance. Wu Yi's mind was chasing the light and gradually approached. Getting closer and closer to the light, and I can even see what's in the light. Looking closer, the light turned out to be a fire, forming a cluster of light. Seeing this fire, Wu Yi suddenly felt familiar and close. But it was precisely at this time that Wu Yi slowed down and approached little by little. A dark shadow loomed in the light group. Wu Yi walked in and found out that it was an ordinary and strange black beetle. At this time, it was waving its tentacles facing Wu Yi. The mysterious voice master who spoke with Wu Yi before. Although the worm is right in front of you, the voice still came from all directions, and it was very strange. Try it, as long as you slowly mobilize the fire and let me come out, I will be able to restore my memory and teach you that great power immortal. Faith. Will you mobilize this fire? Wu Yi's mouth turned up, and he smiled inexplicably, and the black beetle living in the fire couldn't help but trembled. Staring at the flame in front of him, Wu Yi concentrated, trying to sense it, unexpectedly simple, and quickly got in touch with the flame. At this moment, Wu Yi seemed to become a fire, enjoying the joy of burning and keeping the cold away. At the same time, he also saw the black beetle. Yes, that's it. Control the flame to leave. Feeling the change in the flame surrounding you, the black beetle's excited tentacles fluttered around. What are you doing is to let you move the flame away, not gather it together, wailing. The black beetle roared. Wu Yi watched indifferently the black beetle jumping up and down in the flames, but still couldn't escape the flames, and sternly asked, "What is your origin? What is the purpose of approaching me? You dare to do this to me, even if you stop now, I won't teach you the fairy law." The black beetle was so angry that it roared and curled up into a ball, and disappeared in the blink of an eye. The black beetle disappeared, Wu Yi's heart was shocked, and even the flames fluctuated and disappeared, as if to extinguish. He hurriedly concentrated on finding the black beetle. After a while, Wu Yi's mouth showed an imperceptible smile, and his face was still panicked, controlling the spread of the flame. At this time, a black light rushed towards Wu Yi at a speed hard to see with the naked eye, but the flame shrank again fiercely. The black light returned at a faster speed, and between the expansion and contraction, the flames trembled, sparks splashed, and the black beetle reappeared. The black beetle has its belly upside down, waving on 8 legs, but still can't get up, waving and gradually stops moving, as if fainted. Wu Yi can't detect it, simply ignores it, manipulates the flame to roll up and down. The black beetle in the flame stumbles and still doesn't move, the flame shrinks, and the black beetle still doesn't move. Seeing this scene, Wu Yi looked ugly, and now he still doesn't know that the black beetle roared and angry before it was pretended to make him relax his vigilance. Fortunately, he found out where it was hidden under careful inspection, and the design forced it come out, without giving him the opportunity to start. Although the black beetle has nothing to do now, Wu Yi can't do anything to make the appearance of the copper pea. Even Wu Yi suspects that the appearance of the black beetle is not its real body, everything is fake. Wu Yi thought deeply, and the surging flame also stopped. After a long time, seeing the flame lingering, the black beetle turned over and looked at Wu Yi with his head up, and Wu Yi also looked at the black beetle. They could not help each other. It froze for a while and remained silent for a long time. Out of uneasy fear of the unknown, Wu Yi will never endure the existence of things that threaten him, let alone black beetle, no matter what its origin. It is not a mortal thing, how can it endure being bullied by Wu Yi? After a long time, Wu Yi took the lead and said, "What do you want?" After a fight of wits and courage, the black beetle doesn't talk about immortality anymore, just faintly said, "What I want, you won't give it." Wu Yi took a long breath and stared at the black beetle coldly and said, "Is there really no other way?" The black beetle threw its head to the side without answering. "Then I have to bury this bead in the days, and it is not good for you to harm others," Wu Yi said without hurriedly, and turned around and left. Seeing Wu Yi's disagreement, she turned around and left. The black beetle was anxious and said hurriedly, "Wait a minute," but Wu Yi's figure gradually dimmed, which means that Wu Yi's mind is gradually separated from the beads. "We can meet as brothers." Seeing Wu Yi's face was blurred, and the last sentence of the black beetle seemed to roar, "You are the brother, and I am the brother." And Wu Yi's figure stopped dissipating, and began to slowly recover. The two had big eyes and small eyes, especially the black beetle. This time it was really angry, and the scene returned to the appearance of the Cold War before. Ignoring the anger of the black beetle, Wu Yi still asked plainly, "What is your origin?" "I have already said, I am the fire. Can fire also be a creature?" Ignorance. www.mentalnovel.com. The Power of Towering Fortune. Understanding the origin, reversing yin and yang. Every move is the spirit of heaven and earth, and a fire becomes a living being. Wu Yi turned a deaf ear to the sarcasm in the mouth of the black beetle, saying to the core, "So, are you a move of the man in black?" "So what?" The black beetle was very unwilling to be pressed down by Wu Yi before, and the words were full of gunpowder. Stared at the black beetle for a while, "So that mighty body is one." Wu Yi hesitated to speak. "What if it's a bug? Those guys who call themselves dragons and phoenix are different." They still bow their heads under his feet. The black beetle glanced to the side, showing its disdain. "How does this worm look like a child? Didn't it have long been born of wisdom?" With many trials, Wu Yi thought to himself. Bragged about the black beetle without comment, Wu Yi said bluntly, "You can tell me now how you can help me. Don't be too much, I just admit that you are a brother, but I didn't say to help you." The black beetle jumped angrily. "In that case, I think the water vapor in days can get rid of your anger." Wu Yi, who has taken control of the situation, said lightly, "Everything is under control." "Shameless, mean, nasty, shameless." The black beetle grumbled and chattered endlessly. Wu Yi's figure gradually dissipated, and the black beetle finally stopped talking, but hurriedly said, "It's not that I don't give you the exercises. I don't have enough spiritual power. You will take me out at sunrise these few days and wait for me to recover. I'll tell you later." Wu Yi, who dissipated so much that there was only one face left, looked at the black beetle and said, "Remember to do what you say, otherwise, hey." Hearing the last laugh, the black beetle couldn't help but tremble, and its tentacles pointed upwards. The next morning, Wu Yi got up early and removed the ceiling stone. The outside was still dim, but a little light was faintly visible. He placed the beads and candlesticks at the door. The simple appearance made it look like an ordinary palace lantern. "Who is there? I can discover the mystery, it's almost like that." The morning stars are few, sometimes mixed with the sound of insects, from the top of the mountain overlooking the mountain, because the night is not clear, but this hazy feeling is Wu Yi's most enjoyment. You can put down the heart of fighting and enjoy a moment of tranquility. Wu Yi stood outside the cave, straddling with his hand, the morning breeze blew his clothes, quietly waiting for the sunrise. I don't know how long it has been before, when the first sun rises, I see the dawn driving away the darkness like a tide, and the sky is bright. The sun is rising, and the yin and yang are stirred, which contains good fortune. If you practice at this time, you can get great benefits. It is a pity that Wu Yi's sense of qi has not been born, and even the vitality in his body has not been sorted out. How dare to absorb the aura from the outside world, then the aura will be chaotic. Channeling, on the contrary, is a major problem. So Wu Yi was just watching the scenery and soothing his mood. Wu Yi can't use the qi of the first sun, it doesn't mean that others can't use it either. Just for a while, Wu Yi saw 4 or 5 seniors standing on the boulder or standing on the top of the tree, swallowing aura and condensing around them. With the aerosol of Ruian Ruosha, one can tell at a glance that he has entered the qi gathering stage, and can gather the qi of heaven and earth on the surface of the body. 1 or 2 of them nodded to Wu Yi when they looked up to the summit, and Wu Yi nodded in return. The qi of the first sun lasts for a short time, and the tea time will dissipate after sunrise. Seeing that several seniors at the foot of the mountain turned and left, Wu Yi also walked into the cave. The beads at the door were shining in the sunlight. Yesterday, after understanding how to sense the beads late, Wu Yi sank into the beads and saw a scene that surprised him. Is different from the picture I saw when I was sinking into my mind last night. There is a bright light in the beads. The light gets stronger as it goes to the center, but it is not dazzling, but it makes people warm and very comfortable. Relying on his familiarity with flames, Wu Yi easily found the flames and the black beetles that were alive and kicking in the flames. When I first saw Wu Yi, the black beetle jumped up in fright. After falling, she felt too embarrassed. She looked at Wu Yi vigilantly and asked sternly, "What are you doing here? The aura accumulated in a day is not enough for me to teach you the exercises. I just came in and took a look and didn't do anything." Wu Yi glanced at the black beetle and said casually, then looked at the change in the bead. Knowing that Wu Yi was not here to urge the exercises, the black beetle couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief, knowing that he was not capable of expelling Wu Yi, and simply ignored Wu Yi and was right by his side, suffocating the light around him. As the black beetle continues to huff and puff, the light gradually becomes sparse and dim. It can be seen that the black beetle has gained a lot of benefits, but Wu Yi doesn't care, because he also sees that the flame that envelopes the black beetle is also much stronger, so don't worry. When the black beetle becomes stronger, it will burst into flames. Even he discovered that he could control the flames and cut off the absorption of light from the outside world. Although he was viciously warned by the black beetle, but after he realized that he could control the black beetle's cultivation speed, Wu Yi was determined. Wu Yi was about to continue to watch the changes inside the beads, when there was a sound of footsteps from the outside world. The restless Wu Yi quickly dissipated, and his consciousness returned to the outside world. After returning to the outside world, Wu Yi looked at the beads thoughtfully. Can he only get into the beads with full concentration? But now there is no time for him to try. The reason is that outsiders have come. The person who came was Lin Tian, but Wu Yi got up earlier today. The door of the cave was wide open, and after the dusty forest went up the mountain, he saw Wu Yi standing at the door at a glance. "Master, this is today's meal." Lin Li took out the lunch box on his back and placed it on the stone table at the door. Wu Yi nodded, picked up a pot of water and said to Lin Li, "Well, it's not easy for you to go up the mountain. There are not many rare things on the top of the mountain. This is the morning dew I planted. It is sweet and refreshing. Quench hunger and thirst." Lin Li took the kettle, took a sip, cleaned up and took away the lunch box left yesterday, and pleaded guilty. Looking at Lin Li's back, Wu Yi looked at the uncleaned leaves on top of his head and the shoes stained with red soil, and his right hand stroked the fine hairs of his chin, thoughtfully. After thinking for a long time, seeing Lin immediately disappear from the line of sight, Wu Yi finally stood up and followed Lin Li in front of him at an unhurried speed. The plank road crossed a small mouth, which was the blind spot of the mountain's site. Lin Li looked around and made sure that there was no one and got into the grass beside him. Looking along the direction of Lin Li's advancement, it was vaguely visible that the grass was separated to both sides. There are tread marks on the surface, and the broken part is dry, obviously not broken in these 2 days. Seeing this scene with Wu Yi, who was behind Lin Li, he didn't want to continue to follow along. He turned around and went back to his own cave. Today is the time of the small class. You have to tidy up your clothes, and Wu Yi can guess the cause and effect. It is not until today that Wu Yi understands that Lin Li's confidence in making the promise that he will not be late in the future is to go back to the mountain. The Lingxiu peak is steep and has a height of hundreds of feet. In addition, there are only a few dozen disciples. The most important thing is that the disciples' residences are all located near the south of the mountain. In other words, the north of the mountain is a no man's land, and the north of the mountain naturally becomes the back mountain. There are instances where the servants brought by the disciples strayed into the back mountain and never returned. Pushing this matter back, it is not difficult to question, why is it not possible to have a built plank road, but choose a very dangerous road? Pushing again will get an answer that makes Wu Yi extremely angry. Someone at the foot of the mountain is obstructing someone from delivering food to him, or at least delaying the delivery of food to him. Is it so despicable? If it weren't for the kindness of Lin Li and his son, wouldn't I be starved to death on the top of the mountain by these people? Vertical sun, it. Wu Yi clenched his fists with both hands and muttered to himself. No, Wu Yi seemed to think of something, making a fist with his right hand and smashing his left hand. Since there are people under the mountain, Lin Tianyuja, the son of a strong man, how to bring food under their noses must be those people who deliberately opened a mouth. No matter how courage these people are, they will definitely not dare to deprive me of my food. Then why did they do this? Wu Yi fell into thought. After a while, Wu Yi came out of the cave and went to the morning class. He was still thinking about the purpose of those people along the way. Did he irritate him? It was to make Lin Li make this bitter trick to gain his trust. Before obtaining more evidence, Wu Yi could only choose to remain unchanged and wait for the development of the situation. Today, after Wu Yi went out, he stopped thinking about the problem. The bell rang twice before reaching the hall. After sitting down, he found that the new disciples were full of seats, and there was no one in the old disciples. What news did they get? It was only after the class that Wu Yi understood why the old disciples were reluctant to come one by one. It turned out that what I was explaining today was miscellaneous studies. As the state religion of Diwu, Zionation Yukuman not only relied on immortal masters to subdue the law, but also relied on a group of people who did not achieve success in Taoism and Taoism, taught miscellaneous learning, and relied on them to enter the court or serve as a local gentry to help teach the door. The ruling field. The content of miscellaneous studies is all-encompassing, such as chess, piano, calligraphy, and painting, astronomy and geography. If you succeed in your studies, you can also become an erudite, but for these disciples who are determined to cultivate immortality, they are naturally not interested and listless. Looking closely at the professor on the stage, Wu Yi found that it was an old man with grey hair, his muddy eyes narrowed, and his body crouched. Facing the exhausted appearance of the disciple underneath, he did not take it seriously. Telling, it seems to have entered his own world. This is his third time since Wu Yi entered Yuki Taoism. However, the last professor talked about the method of cultivation. All professors have explained this content, but I can't guess who it is, but today I explain miscellaneous studies. Wu Yi, the professor of Wu Yi, had some guesses in his mind. It should be Professor Lu Ziyun. It is said that he was a historian before entering the Dao and was proficient in personnel affairs. Although I was a little bit lost when I knew that it was not about explaining the method of cultivation, as Lu Ziyun's explanation on the stage went deeper, Wu Yi listened attentively, with relish, and nodded and smiled from time to time. There is no other reason. Wu Yi learned these things in Taixu when he had never escaped from Diwu. Compared with the immortal real method he first encountered, he was obviously more familiar with this, and he would not have a partial understanding of it. Since Lu Ziyun explained Diwu's domestic affairs, it could be compared with the original Dixuan kingdom. I have to say that Lu Ziyun is still extremely talented. He deserves to be a historian. In just 2 hours, he has talked about the customs of the various states and counties since the establishment of the Diwu Kingdom Hall. It can be called knowledge of astronomy and geography. All-encompassing. But nonetheless, the disciples underneath were all drowsy. Wu Yi even heard a slight snoring behind him. It can be said that among the dozen disciples, only Wu Yi was really serious in studying. After today's class was finished, Wu Yi, who was still thinking about it, realized that it was over. The disciples around him hurriedly left after giving gifts, showing how impatient they were. Just as Wu Yi was about to turn around and leave, there was a sentence from the station, Jiayu disciple, wait a minute. The positions in the main hall are arranged in the order of the heavens, the stems, and the earth, but since the total number of disciples is only 20 or 30, the ranks of the heavens and the earth are not exhausted. Silently counted the positions in the hall, Wu Yi was surprised to find that Lu Ziyun was calling him on the stage. He looked up, and sure enough, Lu Ziyun looked at him with a kind face and smiled, stroking his beard with his right hand. Appearance. But at this moment, Wu Yi heard a disciple and another person behind him say, the master is going to teach others to learn his miscellaneous studies again. It's just that I wait for the immortal gate and seek out the immortal and visit Taoism. Where did I learn this in my spare time? The voice is not loud or small, but it is enough to make Wu Yi hear it. Even with the ears and eyes of a cultivator, Lu Xiun, who is sitting on the stage, might have heard it too. Hearing these talks, Wu Yi didn't hesitate at all. www.mtlnovel.com got up and walked to the front futon, gave a standard salute, and asked respectfully, "What is the master's order?" Watching Wu Yi's behavior, Lu Xiun nodded and stroked his beard, and asked, "I haven't seen you before, but I came here for the first time." Well, the disciple was only introduced to the gate by Wang Guanzu not long ago, and the Communist Party of China only listened to the lecture twice. Then where are you in your cultivation? Have you ever realized the sense of breath? Wu Yi smiled bitterly, and said, "The disciple is dull, and because of the lack of many courses, he has achieved nothing so far." Lu Xiun let out a cry, then stopped asking such questions, changed the subject, and said, "I think you may have gained something in class before, but you have studied miscellaneous studies before." Wu Yi nodded and said, "The master's expectation is not bad, and the disciple is also considered to be an official. When I was young, I knew a little bit. The most important thing in practicing is to follow nature and relax. Since you have a good grasp of miscellaneous learning, I have a book on miscellaneous learning. You can take it and read it after you practice." Lu Xiankong pulling out a book from the sleeves of the robe, the title page is yellowed, which shows that it has been some years old, and the corners are smooth, which shows that the original owner took great care of it. Wu Yi's eyes flickered, but he did not forget to take it with his hands. He put the book on his chest, and thanked him, "Thank you for the reward, master. Go down." Lu Xiun said lightly with a wave of dust. Wu Yi made a gesture, got up slowly, and went out. I saw Wu Yi being stopped by Lu Xiun before, and some disciples deliberately slowed down, and the people with the tip of the ears heard the conversation inside. At this time, when Wu Yi came out with a book in his hand, his eyes were complicated, and some even looked arrogant. The color of ridicule cannot be concealed. Ignoring their gazes, Wu Yi went out frankly, walking calmly and expressionless, which disappointed some people who wanted to watch his jokes. Ming Dao Feng, Ming Xin Dian, here is not only a place for lectures on large classes, but also a place for discussion on major events within the view. It was late at night, but the place was still brightly lit, with many figures, and the thick lamps of the baby's arms were shining brightly. The red sandalwood incense that Wu Yi cherished so much rose from the 4 huge incense burners in the 4 corners of the main hall, and went straight into the sky. Slowly falling, not dispersing for a long time, rendering the huge hall like a fairyland on earth. Wang Chuchen took the first place, and the deacon and elders in Guanzhong sat in a circle. This discussion system can not only reflect the dominant position of the Guanzu, but also reflect the opinions of the rest of the participants. Of course, the most important thing is that they have already opened their veins, that is, they are building the foundation. Strength is the decisive factor of status. Wang Chuchen's half-step Jindan is naturally the first of this group of people. What they are discussing today is not something else, it is about Wu Yi. The cause of the incident was the impeachment of Wu Yi by a disciple, who believed that his qualifications were low and he was not enough to be a disciple. His words are naturally strong words. Wu Yi has been in the mountain gate for less than half a month, and most people can't get angry within half a month. Although there are some wizards who get angry in 3 days or even faster, it is not enough to comment on Wu Yi so far. With low qualifications, his speech is more like jealous of Wu Yi's abnormal entry. Originally a trivial matter between the disciples caused by jealousy, it only needs to be resolved. The reason why the elders and deacons of Guanzhong came to an end was because of Wang Chuchen, who was behind Wu Yi. If you can use this to prove Wu Yi's low qualifications, then an Wang can be accused of not knowing people and disorderly rising and falling, even if he can maintain the position of the master by virtue of the real name of Linja in the inner door. It is also extremely difficult to continue to maintain the original prestige, and the lost power is lowered, but everyone else here is happy to comment. This impeachment was not simple from the beginning. The disciple knew that Wu Yi was recommended by Wang Chuchen to get started. There would be such an easy impeachment, naturally someone behind it was instigated. Wang Chuchen took the lead and said, "What is being discussed today is the impeachment of Wu Yi by Lu He. What do you think? Please tell me one by one." As soon as Wang Chuchen's voice fell, a professor stood up and bowed to the crowd, and said in a straightforward voice, "Guan Nei has not always recruited talented disciples who have not recruited exceptionally. These people have made rapid progress in their cultivation and demonstrated their talents, just like the last Li Guan recruited. Lin Yu is now the true biography, and I think Wu Yi is not as far away as it is today. This person's name is Sun Hija." Among the professors with white beards and bright heads, his shiny black hair looks very young, so he has a high self-esteem and a big talk. He thinks he can get a glimpse of the secret of the golden core. Confrontation. Wang Chuchen frowned lightly, his face hesitated, and his gaze turned to the Taoist on the right. As the master of one view, he could never give his opinions as soon as he came up, and he was not without any cronies. For example, he now sees Xiang as the deacon Li Gu of Guanzhong. Seeing Wang Chuchen's opinion, Li Gu had a bright heart, and said, "This Lu He is arrogant and arrogant. It is better to remove his disciple status and take back the certificate." Li Gu didn't argue from the perspective of whether Wu Yi's qualifications were low, but started with a letter from the impeacher's leapfrog. It can be big or small. As the deacon in charge of this matter, he was naturally extremely dissatisfied with this. He convicted the impeacher. Not only did he feel bad in his heart, but because of this he denied the impeachment. This was to kill two birds with one stone. Hearing Li Gu's words, Sun Hija immediately replied, "Although Lu He's leapfrog letter is correct, but the impeachment is true, even if he is not rewarded, it should be equal to the merits and demerits." Sun Hija clung to Wu Yi firmly, and tried his best to burn the fire on Wang Chuchen. After that, Li Gu and Sun Hija went back and forth for several rounds. Both parties were unpleasant in words, and no one could convince anyone. Seeing that the scene froze, Wang Chuchen looked at an old man on his left-hand side. He saw that his eyes were muddy, and he seemed to be asleep. This old Dao was called Ji Xian Lang. Half of his body fell into the soil. This life can be regarded as no chance to go further, but he was entrenched in Lihokan for nearly 2 jiazi, and he was also a master of the view. Most of the disciples are blessed by it, and every guru needs its help, and even becomes the de facto guru when the guru is not paying attention to matters. This dispute is likely to be triggered by it, and behind the dispute is the battle between the master and the disciple and the family. The way that Wang Chuchen recruited Wu Yi was a method of mentoring and apprenticeship, just like Linja real person recruiting Wang Chuchen in the past, and the family line represented by Ji Xianlang is based on blood relationship, supplemented by talent. In the past, major families had almost monopolized the quota of all disciples. Wu Yi is a that Wang Chuchen put out to carry out the reform of accepting apprentices, and Lu He is a put out by Ji Xianlang to oppose the reform. The game of will start between the two. "Brother Ji, what do you think should be done with this matter?" Wang Chuchen faced Ji Xianlang and asked. Well, Ji Xianlang was at a loss for a while, as if he had just awakened from a big dream, and then he said casually, "In just half a month, I can't see anything. It's better to wait a few days to see the after effects." Ji Xianlang did not try to find out what Wu Yi's aptitude was, but chose to drag the word tactics, which not only showed the image of tolerance and generosity, but also quietly skipped Lu He's leapfrog letter. Wang Chuchen did not entangle him, and said, "Goodness, this matter is decided for the time being. I don't know if you have any objections." He said that he looked at everyone with a spring breeze. When everyone was seen by him, he felt a sense of oppression. It was Sun Hija who was the most rebellious. At this time, he also nodded and said in unison with everyone, "It's so good." After the council, Li Gu walked at the end and said to Wang Chuchen, "Why should I make Wu Yi the breaker? Half a month has passed, and he hasn't seen any signs of anger. Wouldn't it be bad then? The brother has worked hard." There seemed to be a hint of censuring Wang Chuchen in the words. Wang Chuchen smiled faintly, and said, "If it is fortunate to open a path for many poor people, it is naturally my wish. If not, it will not be any worse than now. Success may be gratifying, and loss will not be disturbed." Li Gu was helpless, knowing that his brother had never cared much about power struggles, so he had to retreat in anguish. The next day, Wu Yi chose to get up before dawn and put the beads at the door so that he could absorb more of the first sun. It is another day at sunrise, when the first bright color of the east opens the sky, a new day has arrived. Looking at the majestic golden crow, Wu Yi thought on a whim, not knowing that the method he figured out yesterday would be effective. Just do what you want, Wu Yi stopped mind and thought, imagine 2 elephants, turtles and snakes. Soon, the long spit-naked sound came again. Can't tell how different it is from other times of cultivation, it seems that the air is fresher and more humid, and you can smell the fragrance of the soil. The time for the first sun to rise very quickly. When Wu Yi felt the heat, he stopped vomiting. Wu Yi's eyes flashed with a gleam of suspicion. He could feel the flow and change of the spiritual energy of the heavens and the earth, as well as the power contained in it, but like a bystander, sitting and watching it move in the body, but unable to mobilize it. Perhaps this is the difference between the immortal and the common world. Wu Yi understood in his heart that the monk received the spiritual energy of the world and changed the yin and yang. Wu Yi knew that the qi was born in the lower danshan, but he could not guide the aura into the lower danshan. He could only sit and watch the aura dissipate to the whole body, and then slowly leave the body as he exhales. The body can indeed absorb some aura spontaneously. But the difference compared to those exercises is not to be counted. Strictly speaking, Wu Yi's self-realization now is not a cultivation technique, but more like the technique of strengthening the body. Long-term practice can indeed achieve the effect of prolonging life, but it cannot open the gate of cultivation. How to mobilize these auras? Wu Yi fell into deep thought. By the way, how could I forget this? Wu Yi suddenly got up and hurriedly took out the little Zhoutian transport technique from the series. This scripture was previously set aside by Wu Yi because it mostly described the cultivation methods after the sense of breath. Seeking another way out, then realized that the 2 turtles and snakes vomit and nashu. What Wu Yi thought was that since the way of cultivation is like this after comprehending the sense of qi, if you reverse it, wouldn't it be possible to realize the sense of qi from this? Wu Yi opened the book and read it carefully again, for fear of missing a little bit. Inner qi circulates along the ren and du channels in the body for a week, that is, the internal qi starts from the lower danshan, passes through the perineum, passes through the anus, passes through the tail, jiaji, and yuzhen 3 passes along the spine and governs channels, and then reaches the top of the head. It separates from the ears and cheeks to the tip of the tongue. It connects to the ren pulse, and returns to the danshan along the middle of the chest and abdomen. Wu Yi read out a little bit. Although he has already memorized these things silently, what he has to do now is to modify gongfa. Imagine yourself sometimes as a tortoise and sometimes as a snake. Wu Yi's long breath came from under his nose. Be careful to let the internal qi pass through the ren-du channel, 1 inhalation and 1 vomiting, and the circulation cannot be interrupted. Only circulated 12 times, Wu Yi oozes sweat on his forehead, he had to open his eyes were dull and his whole body was shaky. It hurts so much. Wu Yi looked tired, but he couldn't hide the joy in his heart. Before, he clearly felt that his inner qi was blocked when it passed under the navel, but every time the inner qi passed through, the blockage was felt. It was shaken once, and it can be expected that when this sense of obstruction disappeared, it was when he felt a sense of breath. Less than a week after Wu Yi continued to practice, an angry shout came from his ear, "Stop, do you want to die?" Wu Yi, who was trying to control the spitting out of the turbid air, did not hold on to it in one breath. "What did you say?" Wu Yi asked, looking at Zuzi, his voice weak. "With your cultivation method, not to mention the feeling of anger in the danshan, the whole person will soon collapse." The black beetle proudly said with disdain. Wu Yi said nothing, knowing that it was true. He actually had a thought in his mind to see where his limits were www.mtlnovel.com, but was interrupted by the black beetle. "If I die, wouldn't you be free again and remind me what to do? Even if you want to find your own way, you should die under my hands, otherwise it will be hard to get sick in my heart." Wu Yi knew that it was probably the fire behind him. If he died, the black beetle would be unpleasant, and even sacrifice for him. This is the reason why the black beetle intervened. In fact, Wu Yi might not have no idea in his heart. Trying to test the black beetle's idea, now it seems that half of the success. Then what should I do? The reason why Wu Yi asked black beetle to speak in advance is for the question now. If you ask like this before, it must be the black beetle who has the upper hand, and the subject and object are transposed. But now, it is the black beetle who consciously asks. The exercise was given to him, but the black beetle begged him to take it. If you don't look for some natural treasures, and practice rashly, you will eventually die by exhaustion. I'm a person who is looking for the truth from my family. Where can I find the treasures of the world? Although I am poor, rich in culture and military, but the big exam is approaching, I have to do this fierce way." Wu Yi made a rogue appearance and made up his mind to let the black beetle spit out something good. The black beetle was silent for a long time. Wu Yi did not speak, waiting for the black beetle's decision, silently thinking about the omissions and mistakes of the previous practice, and perfecting his own thoughts. After a cup of tea, it can be seen that the black beetle is struggling, and finally he still speaks. "I have a body refining technique here. You can use it to practice without embellishment, which can be beneficial." A red light came out through the flame. "It should be harmless." Wu Yi let the red light enter his brain with confidence. The red light is made up of countless figures. At first it looks quiet, but when it looks at it, it becomes a dynamic scene. It is very wonderful. It's just another practice and a fight with the black beetle. Wu Yi, who has long been exhausted, has no energy to look at this, and goes to bed to fall asleep. Oh! Wu Yi stretched, and when it was almost noon when he woke up, the surging heat wave made the summer insects on the top of the tree noisy. I have to say that sleep is indeed a good way to eliminate fatigue, but the disadvantages are also obvious. If you rely on sleep to replenish energy every day, there will be little time for practice. Wu Yi remembered the red light that the black beetle had passed to him before. He didn't dare to delay, and imagined that the red light appeared in Wu Yi's mind. Before Wu Yi discovered that the red light is actually composed of pictures, standing or sitting, lying or standing, with various postures and different looks. Wu Yi suddenly thought of something, and asked Zuzi, "Hey, didn't you say that the great power is a different species? How can there be human exercises?" Although this red light was not surrounded by the flames of the black beetle blocked, but out of caution, Wu Yi still asked. The immortal understands the origin. In a sense, there is no division of species. The reason you see the human figure is because you look at it from a human perspective. You can try to look at it from a different perspective. Anyway, I have already given Wu Yi this technique, and the black beetle didn't twitch it, and explained it to Wu Yi openly. Wu Yi heard the words and imagined that he was a black beetle and then looked at it. Sure enough, the picture has turned into a black beetle or opened its mouth or waving its tentacles. When thinking about other animals, the picture has also changed one by one, which is worthy of great power. The Fa is very different from what Wu Yi has realized himself. Became a human figure again, Wu Yi still sighed, shocked. Does this technique have a name? After the shock, Wu Yi was still full of admiration and couldn't help but ask. It's just a common exercise. What's a good name for it? The black beetle looked down on the peasants in the countryside just like the residents of the imperial city, and Wu Yi choked with speech. After a boring discussion, Wu Yi also let go of the question, discarded distracting thoughts, looked at the red light wholeheartedly, and tried to imitate the above exercises. Wu Yi found that the red light seemed chaotic and changeless. In fact, there were only 9 movements, involving the head, hands, feet, chest, abdomen, back, waist, legs, shoulders, etc., but these 9 movements passed through different movements. The combination of has formed thousands of changes, really turning decay into magic. After understanding this, Wu Yi went even further in his respect for that mighty man. A simple movement is nothing more than that one part moves, while other parts do not move. The range of change is all in your heart, in short, only this one part can move. In the process of cultivation, Wu Yi was surprised to find that as long as he made one of the actions, the red light would automatically change into this action, and then change again, just like an instructive teacher. It's just that this teacher is too good. Wu Yi was sweating, and the red light did keep changing, but Wu Yi couldn't keep up with him. 1 action, 2 actions, the third one is very difficult. As for the fourth one, he can't keep up at all, so he can only give up, and the red light also stops. It seems that he is waiting for Wu Yi to recover slowly. When Wu Yi stopped adjusting his qi, the black beetle said in a timely manner, as long as you can persist in hitting the 9 movements consistently, even if you don't use other exercises, you can also develop a sense of qi. Considering your 5 every day is a lesson, so this red light can only exist for 5 days, if it is, hee. The black beetle didn't clearly say how it was, but the dark laughter had already indicated everything. Wu Yi ignored his villain's ambitions. At this time, it didn't make sense to argue with him about why not let the red light exist for a few more days. The black beetle could choke Wu Yi to death because of insufficient yang qi intake. You must know that Wu Yi is unrighteous. Before, he was involved in danger and forced the black beetle to come up with exercises. Wu Yi had already prepared for the black beetle to hand over its private possessions in advance. Can only go in now, not retreat. Wu Yi secretly cheered up for himself, clasping his hands tightly. After the breath calmed down, Wu Yi went into practice again. In the cave, I only heard bursts of fists and legs, and Wu Yi shouted. The next morning. Huo! Wu Yi suddenly leaned back and heard the sound of breaking wind. The 5th action is finally barely played. Wu Yi was sweaty and his face was exhilarating, but he couldn't conceal the worry and irritability of his eyebrow feathers. Since he started practicing these 9 movements at noon yesterday, he quickly performed the 4th movement, but he was unable to perform the 5th movement for a long time. Although these actions are not as painful as reversing Xiao Zhou Tian, it is not possible to practice constantly. After stopping, you need to calm your breath to restore yourself to the best state, otherwise you will not be able to make the actions continuous. It is tantamount to doing useless work. Even if he postponed the cultivation method that he had come up with to reverse Xiao Zhou Tian, and used it to practice these 9 movements except eating and sleeping, it seems that he still cannot complete the task of performing these 9 movements continuously within 5 days. When he took a break again, Wu Yi realized that he couldn't continue like this anymore and had to change. Wu Yi tried hard to think about what other help he could borrow. Compared with the local princes and nobles, he had no more control over resources than those local princes and nobles, and there was no panacea to take. What else is there? Wu Yi's mind turned sharply. One by one, the aura appeared, and one after another was shattered, until he remembered the words of the black beetle. The black beetle first said to me that this technique of refining the body can be a tonic. It can be a tonic, what can it be, and it can be a tonic for me to reverse Xiao Zhou Tian. Wu Yi's thoughts turned sharply, and gradually he grasped a few important points. In the eyes of outsiders, Wu Yi's complexion changed, sometimes confused, sometimes happy, sometimes distressed, but in the end all became one, that is perseverance. When Wu Yi practiced again, he no longer insisted on making sure to strike down the movements one by one. Instead, he tried to integrate his previous insights into this set of exercises. To be safe, he first tried the 2 elephants and turtles. Respiration technique. This respiration technique does not involve the secret of immortality, it is only used to strengthen the body. Very easy, Wu Yi quickly integrated this technique of breathing into the body refining process, and even the 5th movement that he barely played before was much smoother. In other words, Wu Yi was already familiar with the 5th movement. Sure enough, Wu Yi smiled at the corner of his mouth. This set of physical exercises needed to be used in conjunction. After finding out the way, Wu Yi became more confident, shrugged his abdomen, kicked and punched, moving smoothly and freely. Black Beetle sensed this scene, raised his head and glanced at Wu Yi, with a complex complexion, then dropped his head again, breathing in the breath of the first sun. After perfectly fusing the turtle snake-like breathing technique with the exercise technique, Wu Yi began to try to incorporate the reversal small gait he had thought of himself. 1 week, 2 weeks, until I couldn't hold on, 32 weeks. Wu Yi cried out in shock. You must know that Wu Yi was faltering last time in just 12 weeks, and he slept all morning before regaining his energy. And the reason why he can't keep going is not because of lack of energy, but because of shortness of breath. This also means that he can continue to practice. Going on, how can this not please Wu Yi? No wonder he was surprised with his always restrained temperament. Other than that, he was only able to complete the 5th action before, but now he has completed 7 actions in one jump, and completed 2 consecutive actions at once, which is worthy of his hard work in a day, or even more. After understanding the direction of his cultivation, Wu Yi worked harder and harder to practice. In the next few days, he practiced all the time. On the 5th day, Wu Yi still woke up as early as the previous few days. He had a hunch that he could feel angry at one fell swoop today, a very inexplicable feeling, and even Wu Yi faintly realized that if he missed it today, he might have it next time. This hunch will pass for a long time. This opportunity was decided not to be missed. Wu Yi said in his heart. After finishing his mentality, Wu Yi began to slowly unfold his body with punches and kicks. The breath was endless, like a turtle like a snake, both fierce and vigorous. Wu Yi, who completely sinks his heart, has forgotten time and space. He only remembers that the aura runs along the small Zhoutian meridian and constantly impacts the lower Danshan. He only remembers the 9 movements, and even the sequence of the previous 9 exercises. I also forgot, wherever I call it. Wu Yi is no better than a drunk person now, confused, but it is this kind of confused state that is natural, without artificial human resources, that is the most likely to cross the immortal barrier and truly enter immortal. The bell rang for the first time. Wu Yi didn't wake up. The speed of his selfless shots was getting faster and faster. Gradually, ordinary people could only see one shadow, and his afterimages were everywhere in the air. The second time the bell rang, Wu Yi hasn't woken up yet, but at this time, his shot speed is getting slower and slower, but now he can't see what moves he is using. There are shadows of the 9 movements. But it doesn't seem to be the same, and it seems to blend them together. Originally, because Wu Yi did not fully grasp the 9 movements, it was obvious that there was a pause in the middle, but now because the movements become slow, it is not visible, and perhaps it is about to be completely mastered that the pause is not obvious. The third time the bell rang, and the morning class began. Wu Yi was absent from class, but when the third bell rang, Wu Yi suddenly stopped. Mang, the long and profound inhalation sound, the aura pouring from the mouth and nose like a tide, Wu Yi's eyes are closed, his face is calm, and the trance consciousness seems to be integrated with the entire process of breathing. On the top of Wu Yi's head, a mysterious tortoise faintly appeared, inhaling a long time, a sky snake, exhaling slowly, the mysterious tortoise sky snake connected head to tail, mixed into a black and white Tai Chi yin and yang picture, slowly turning. The aura running in an orderly manner in the body smashed the lower dantian into a gap. A wisp of aura entered the dantian, and the dantian, which had not been moving, trembled suddenly and swallowed all the aura in his body. Wu Yi had to keep breathing. His face is red and his ears are red, and even the Tai Chi picture on the top of his head is undulating, and there is a danger of disintegration. But after too much time, the disappeared aura reappeared and was slowly spit out by the dantian, but it seemed to be a little more agile than the original step-by-step aura. This was because the aura was mixed with a trace of Wu Yi's innate qi, also called innate vitality. The aura disappears and appears from time to time in the orifice. After 12 consecutive cycles, the aura finally stays in the orifice steadily. At this time, the aura and Wu Yi's own vitality have merged into one. www.mtlnovel.com regardless of each other. The yin-yang Tai Chi picture looming in the void shines brightly at this time, slowly falling down until it sinks onto Wu Yi's forehead. As if being knocked by a jade mallet, a clear sound came from my ears, and there was a vast expanse of whiteness in front of my eyes, and then there was a lot of light. Wu Yi slowly opened his eyes, and burst into a hole in the ground with a mouth full of turbid air. Gritted his teeth tightly, Wu Yi took a step forward, only to hear the humming of his muscles and bones all over his body. The ka-cha-cha sounded non-stop, and his body suddenly raised half of his head. It's not like a 12-year-old child, but a 14-5-year-old boy. Wu Yi stood there and laughed, and the panic since leaving home to go to the country was gone, and he seemed contented. The worries of the past month have finally disappeared. How to prevent him from laughing out loud? At this time, if he still forcibly suppresses his joy, it seems stupid. Only when the mood remains natural can he make the most progress. After feeling for a long time, Wu Yi realized that his robe was messy, unkempt, and his whole body gave off a disgusting smell. This is the process of the monk washing the hair and cutting the marrow after he has a sense of breath, and expelling the dirt that was originally hidden in the body. There is a hot spring in the innermost part of the cave. Since this cave has not been inhabited for a long time, Wu Yi cleaned it once when he first came, and it was not particularly clean. In the hot spring, wash away all the dirt. It's not that he didn't know that there was a morning class today, but the morning class is not mandatory for disciples to go. If there are special circumstances, he cannot go. But what Wu Yi didn't know was that it was the morning class he ignored that became his first crisis.